How was the discussion yesterday? Was that helpful? Good.
I have to say there are more discussion than the meditation, the 25 minutes meditation.
Okay, all right. Well, the thing is with the discussion that you can only do with others. Meditation you can do on your own. So I think it's nice to use the opportunity and do the discussion together. Okay, great. We can, I guess, also after some time change the groups around a little bit. Sometimes that's done, sometimes it's not. It just depends, because then you get to talk to everyone and find out, you know, everyone's different views. All right, great. So we start as always with the motivation. Maybe to say this, and I'm sure many of you know this, but it's so incredible. The power of our mind is such that what happens with whatever we're going to discuss today always has to do with our motivation in the beginning. That's incredible. So it has a very different effect on us, and that's why there's so much emphasis on the motivation. And of course also, as you all know, the emphasis is very much not just benefiting ourselves, but also being of great benefit to all others. So to make an effort, and we'll go more into this, the different techniques of doing this, why it makes sense, why it doesn't make sense to not do it. We need to go more into it, but for the time being, really pay extra attention on that. Because you don't just do it for yourself, you do it for everyone. Even if that's a little fake. I mean, right now, let's face it, it's fake. But it's these things, it's one of these things, you start off with it, it's pretty fake. Any kind of exercise you do, like yoga, you can hardly raise your arms, and it's pretty fake. But then after some time, you get better and better and better and better. That's why we do it. But when we work, when we have this motivation, I do this for the benefit of everyone, it's so much more forceful because everyone is involved somehow, at least in our mind. And then we take in things, we take on a responsibility that is not heavy, but rather gives us courage and somehow has a different effect on our mind. It's just basic psychology, Buddhist psychology. All right, so having said that, let's start as usual with breathing meditation. But I also ask you to visualize this inspiring person in the space in front of you, whether that's in the form of the Buddha, in the form of a Lama you find inspiring, in the form of any being you associate with what we're learning, then do so. Because again, we don't live in bubbles. Everything we learn is we learn from others. And usually when we visualize the Buddha, for instance, what's so amazing about the Buddha is that the Buddha lived everything that he taught. So it's like teaching not only through his words, but also teaching through his example. So if we have that, bring that to mind, we may be more encouraged to become like that, right? I mean, we do it all the time. We have certain examples that guide us. So here in this case, visualize the Buddha, that inspirational force. Sometimes this word in English, the word that is used in this case, like inspiration, they use blessing. Blessing, that's such a weird word in English. I mean, we actually took it from other religions. And in some contexts, you could translate it rather as inspiration. So just have this being and go like, wow, I want to be like that. And we all can. So therefore, here, like blessing means inspiration. In other contexts, actually, it's a Tibetan word, means to change into something greater. So the influence of another person can be such. Of course, we still have to do all the work, unfortunately. It's not like they're going to put their qualities, they cannot implant them on us. Of course not. But it's not that we're totally separate. They very much inspire us. Having these great beings makes all the difference. They inspire us in such a way that we are blessed, which in Tibetan means we change into something greater. We change into something greater. Jinlap basically means changing into something greater. So blessing is a little bit confusing, I guess, or can be easily misunderstood. So we visualize, as I said, the Buddha, and then all around us, all sentient beings. That just brings it closer. As I said yesterday, of course we're all surrounded by sentient beings. I mean, just in this area of Thosamling, how many insects are in here? But then, of course, humans, okay, less humans for sure, but still like thinking of all humans, but also thinking of any form of life in the sense of sentient beings, beings with a mind. And that includes, and that's so hard for us, insects, right? It's like insects are so tiny. How could they, I mean, we look at the size of their bodies, right? I mean, the mind doesn't have a size, so it fits anywhere. And so, therefore, when we do the meditation, usually we're encouraged to think of all sentient beings in the form of humans. Not that they're all humans, but we can relate to them better. And it also reminds us that no matter how tiny, no matter their form, no matter their ability at some point, they can all become humans. So when it comes to reincarnation, that's one of the hardest. Oh yeah, humans to humans, fine. But fly to human, that seems too tiny. But why not? We're so focused on the material, the material means the body, right? Since the body is so small, they can't, and since their ability is so limited, but they're humans who, because of maybe some brain damage, their abilities are very limited. Yeah? And just because someone has a big body, I mean, so elephants can become humans? Yeah, elephants, flies, whatever. It's just the mind, that's the main part. They have a mind, they have consciousness, they're aware. And that they're aware, we know. You know, you come too close with your finger, you move too close towards a fly. And nowadays, we no longer talk about instincts. Science has moved away from saying, oh, it's all instinctive, it's all instinct, it's all instinct. No, they do recognize that animals can put themselves into our shoes. There's some tests. The latest I remember, I just want to share that with you because it's quite beautiful. So they did this test where they put a human being right here and a dog over there. So a dog over there. And there was like a little wall here and a little wall there. And then behind, from my perspective, behind the wall, they put something like a ball on both sides. So the dog stood over there, and when the person said, catch the ball, oh no, sorry, no, I'm making a mistake. There was a wall here and the ball in front of it, and then on this side there was no wall. There was just the ball lying there. So the human knew there was a ball on both sides, but what the human being could see, was only the ball on that side because it wasn't obstructed by the little wall. And now it asked the dog to fetch the ball. And interestingly, the dog never got that ball because it thought the human cannot see it. So however often they did that, they changed it around, they put the ball there. Whenever the human couldn't see the ball and the dog was aware of that, was visible, it could see that because there was something obstructing it. So it knew it couldn't do it. It never got the ball that was hidden to the human. Never ever, not even once. And they did it with different dogs and with different walls and different balls. It's not like they just tried it once and, oh great, it works. No, they did a lot of experiments on that. So that shows even an animal can put themselves into our shoes, can understand what we are perceiving to a certain degree. And of course, who's ever had pets knows that they when we're upset, when we're excited, they know that. It's not like they're like just like machines or robots. And it's so beautiful. There's so many documentaries now about animals. Octopus, right? My teacher, the octopus. This kind of stuff. And then I listened to this program about this guy who found a penguin the other day, or no, years ago, 25 years ago, not the other day. He found a penguin that was full of tar and, you know, like was dirty from oil, like it was an oil spill, and it got totally dirty. And it took it home and cleaned it, and then tried to get rid of the penguin again. And it wouldn't let go of him. You throw in the water, it come back. Throw in the water, it came back. So he lived with that penguin for some time. It wasn't like, he said, like, it's not even my pet. I didn't choose the penguin chose me. And he lived with him in this compound in Argentina, it was in this place, Uruguay or something, like where they have all these penguins. It's below Argentina, so he lived there. And there was a swimming pool there, and so I took the penguin there, and it played with the kids, and it didn't want to, you know, it's like, it was like not like a human. Of course it wasn't like a human, but it had feelings. I don't know what made this penguin want to live with this human. Unfortunately, he died in the end. He did die, but he was already older. So, you know, it's like to say it's just instinct, and I mean, maybe we were really connected to them in a different life, some of them, and we just reconnect, and in this life they have this particular form, and then they come back in a different form. It's hard for us to believe in the West, but really only because we're so focused on the external, on the material. Yeah, anyway, I need to bring this in slowly. Reincarnation, we'll have to discuss it. It's all part of what we're studying. So what is the reasoning? What is behind that? And of course, no one needs to believe it. It's not about that, but at least introduce it and see it as a possibility. Because the way I look at it, to believe in reincarnation, to at least be open to the possibility, to believe that our actions have consequences, bringing those two together is a win-win situation. Why is that a win-win situation? Because if we live our lives like that, if we live our lives thinking there's something in the future, we plan differently. So just now, we do already plan for our old age, and we don't waste all our money, and we don't eat all the crappy food we can lay our hand on, because we're, you know, we want to be healthy and strong in the future. But if we take the possibility, without knowing it exists or not, doesn't matter, live as if there was reincarnation and our actions have consequences, right? So even if you rob a bank, you may have a lot of money in this life, but future life, you have a problem, right? Stealing from someone, none of the money you have you can take with you, and in your future, you're in trouble. That's the idea. Whatever you do to others comes back to you. And so therefore, if you live according to future lives and the law of karma, then you live virtuous, you live a virtuous life, you won't harm others because you don't want to be harmed back. And if then, when you die, first of all, there are no regrets. Why would you have regret? If you really live according to these ideas, what regret would there be, right? You haven't harmed anyone. And you know, when people die, it's not about regrets. Oh, I didn't climb Mount Everest. Bloody hell. That's usually not what people say when they die. No, it's rather, what did I do to that person? What did I do? And oftentimes, you know, like killers, they confess towards the end of their life. For whatever reason. Sometimes they're religious, it's because of religious beliefs, but sometimes they just want to relieve because this non-virtue, that's heavy, they carry it with them. It's psychologically not easy to carry that, especially if they had the motivation to really harm that person. And thus, as I said, if we live a life where we don't harm others, as much as we can, we avoid harming others, avoiding harming ourselves, of course, but also others, then there's, first of all, no regret. We were good examples for our children, right? Our children pick up, I mean, we can teach our children a lot, but if we don't live what we teach, they'll take it on. They'll take it on. And then secondly, if there is no reincarnation, right? If there's nothing afterwards, well, then it doesn't matter. It wasn't a waste of time because we did live a reasonably happy life. I mean, our children were guided in the right kind of way, so it doesn't matter. If there is like in the Abrahamic faith, there's like heaven, you're going to be with God or whatever the belief is, well, that's where you're going. And if there's reincarnation, you're also safe. So win-win, right? So win-win. Whereas thinking, oh, there's just with this life. There's just this. I can be as selfish as it gets. I'm just going to get whatever. I mean, besides the fact we're not going to be really happy, besides that, but on top of that, of course, yeah, well, if there's something after life, then we're in deep trouble. And maybe one last thing. I remember reading in a, oh, I forget which magazine it was. It was like a really good magazine that, I think it was Newsweek or Times magazine. It was a really good article about psychology, modern psychology. And they talked about how harming people has a very profound effect on our mind, a profound negative effect. We may not realize that right away, but any kind of violence that people inflict on others, especially out of, hating them, for instance, not like being made to do it, but hating other people, can have a very negative effect. So they talked about some of the members of the Taliban that sometimes were really aggressive, and they hated those people who misbehaved in a way that was not in accordance with the Quran and so forth. So they tortured women, they tortured children sometimes. It was terrible. But there was this particular town, and in that town was a man. He was not a member of the Taliban. He was a trained psychologist, and he gave he had like what do you call it, like therapeutical lessons with these Taliban members of the Taliban. So they came to him. They couldn't sleep. Many of them couldn't sleep. They couldn't eat. They were not feeling well. So because of this, they had PTSD in the sense of like that violence that they had knowingly inflicted on sometimes women and children. So the thing was that this particular psychologist, his wife ran a school for girls in their basement, and kind of everyone knew. And that doctor also didn't go to the what's it called? The temple? No, it's not called the temple. The mosque. He didn't go to the mosque. So on Friday, the Taliban was standing on the roof, like, everyone to the mosque, everyone to the mosque. And then the doctor didn't go to the mosque. Leave the doctor. Leave the doctor. We need the doctor. So the doctor had certain freedoms, apparently, because these guys from the Taliban, they needed this doctor to help with their insomnia and all their problems. And I thought that was such a beautiful example of how violence, of course the motivation is important. Sometimes we do things, we can't help it. We may step on something we don't even know, or for whatever the situation we have to do so. But if it's like you hate someone and out of your own motivation you kill innocent, yeah, then that can be a really heavy load on yourself. It just shows our mind is not made to be violent. It's not supposed to be violent. We are oftentimes, as we've heard, because of that misconception we have, right? Because the root misconception we have, and therefore we find ourselves in certain situations, and that's why we experience what we experience. All right. Anyway, having said all that, so that was a long introduction. Let's meditate now. All right? Okay. As usual, we start with mindfulness meditation, that is just focusing on the breath. the space in front of you. Visualize someone who deeply inspires you. The Buddha, or maybe someone like His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And try to elicit that feeling of inspiration. The thought, I want to become just like them. At the same time, also visualize that you're surrounded by all sentient beings. Which all appear in the form of humans. And just remember how we're all interconnected. All these humans who work to provide us with the food we get, the clothes we wear, who build the streets we use to get from one place to another. And then all the animals, including insects. Without whom the environment would look very different. And it's their presence. It's what they do that helps us to stay healthy, strong, and to basically survive. which is why it makes total sense to not just look after our own well-being, but also the well-being of others. Since our well-being is dependent on the well-being of other sentient beings. So let's generate a mind that sincerely wishes for every living being to be free from trouble, worry, and any other unpleasant experience. Together with their causes. And let's think, may whatever we learn today be not just for our own benefit, but for the benefit of each and every living being. May help me to actualize my fullest potential. Utilize the incredible power of my own mind. To then be able to help others through my words and my example to achieve the very same. So with this motivation, without letting go of it, let's recite the prayer on page 6. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, by the two accumulations created by practicing generosity and the other affection. May I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, by the two accumulations created by practicing generosity and the other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, by the two accumulations created by practicing generosity and the other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. All right. And again, if we say we take refuge, don't misunderstand. It does mean actually just to remind ourselves when it comes to the Dharma. They're just psychological methods and means. So what is there that I could utilize in my own life? And basically just reminding us to look at the Dharma and see whether there's something that helps me. But going back to what we discussed so far, what did we discuss so far? Well, we spoke about our predicament at this point, that what we think is total happiness is going to give us lasting happiness. I mean, how often did we have the thought, if I just had that, I'd be happy forever, right? I mean, even as children, like we would say to our parents, if you just got me this, I will never need anything more. But of course, that's not true. And then once we're grown up, if I just had that job, if I just had that, I don't know, if I got into that school, if I had the relationship with that person, I would find lasting happiness. And it never happens. It feels like that, doesn't it? The wish is so strong in that moment. Of course, it is very strong. And it may even feel, it's an interesting psychological aspect of our own mind, because that's what we're looking for. We are looking for some lasting satisfaction. We're looking for it all the time. Am I right? We're always looking, oh, if I had that, then I finally, because it's tiring to always want something. It is exhausting. The more we keep wanting, the busier we are, because we have to always look for that thing and we never get time to really relax. So that constant dissatisfaction is very exhausting. It's stressful. I mean, talking about stress in the 21st century, that's stress. Stress is not external. We often have a sense, oh, I've got that stressful job, so it's like the job is the problem. But it's not the job. In fact, like I said many times, science and Buddhism have become very close. So when it comes to stress, for instance, there's been a very interesting experiment that was done by Harvard University. And I remember hearing about it for the first time in a TED talk. The lady who was part of the experiment, she talked about how they had these two groups of people, and they had to undergo these crazy jobs, like crazy things they made them do, like crazy in the sense of like, they had to be very quick, they had to be, very, very effective and right away react. So what we would usually possibly call a stressful task. And so one group, they said, this is stress. This is really bad for you. It's going to be bad. It's bad for your heart. It's going to be bad for your blood pressure. Your brain may be affected. Your kidneys may be affected, whatever. So like telling them this is really, really stressful. The other group, they said, this is really good for you. This is going to help you grow. It's going to make you stronger, more courageous. So these tasks were specially designed to, achieve all that. And guess what? After about 2 weeks, the first group was totally exhausted. They felt so stressed out because they'd been told it was stressful, it was not good for them. And, it was Harvard, so they weren't really aware of the scale of this or the scope of this experiment. And so they, totally believed in it, and they were exhausted and stressed out, basically. And the other group, they were like just, they were just starting, basically. They felt like we could do more, So you see, it's the power of the mind. It all comes down to our attitude. And therefore, stress is really mental. But there are certain things, for instance, our mental afflictions, our negative emotions, our harmful emotions, I should say, the harmful ones, they really stress us. They're stressful. That's real stress. So in Buddhism, you don't use the word stress. The technical term is, it disrupts the peace of mind. That's okay. I mean, that's the literal translation from the Tibetan. It kind of disrupts or destroys the peace of mind, if you want. So you could translate it that way. But that's not like something we use so much in daily life. I would call it stress. it puts an incredible stress on the mind. I mean, try to be angry the whole day, right? I'm pretty sure we had moments when we got pissed off, for lack of a better word, with someone. Usually they're people really close to us. It's interesting. It's not the bus driver that I've never really talked to, or the guy who sells the banana in the next village. No, usually we don't have a big problem. Or, you know, people some other country. The people we're closest to. Sometimes the aggression is the strongest when it comes to them. It's just part of being a human being. So maybe family or friends. And sometimes, of course, it's others. It can be strangers, some politicians. That's sometimes worse, because there's nothing we can do. They've been elected, they're going to be around for the next, I don't know how many years, and that's it. So, yeah, it can be that as well. And as I said in the very beginning, this anger, aggression, whatever, it's like eating poison and expecting the other person to die. It really feels that way. I mean, you're stressing yourself out. You're getting into huge trouble. Like there's the effect just on the body. There's been a lot of scientific research on the effects on the body. There was a time when modern psychology, maybe 30, 40 years ago, they did talk about, oh, if you've got a lot of anger, you should let it out. Live your anger. But the problem was the anger got stronger. That's just the nature of anger. If you just allow for it to run wild, you habituate, you become habituated to being angry. I don't want you to experiment on that, but if you were to do that, if you're usually like a really mellow person and you don't easily become angry, and then one day you do, and then again the next, you'll find, oh, it becomes easier and easier. It's just a habit. And people, they can reduce that habit. I had some of my classmates, at least one, I can think of one, he was very, very aggressive, quite aggressive and angry. And the thing was, my classmates, they were actually really sweet, because Tibetans, I mean, they were all Tibetan monks. I couldn't join any of the nunneries at the time because either they didn't exist yet, or they were so full with nuns arriving from Tibet all the time, so they couldn't accept me. So I had to study where I ended up studying at the IBD. So my classmates were all monks. Many of them had arrived from Tibet or had studied in the big monasteries in the south already, and then they had to start from scratch because they came from McLeodganj. Either they had health issues, or they wanted to also study more grammar or more English, study other subjects as well. Sometimes there were a lot of pujas that they had to do in the monastery, so they didn't want to do all those all the time. So anyway, for different reasons people came. They were very, very Tibetan in their way, but what was very sweet, is part of that Tibetan culture, especially among the monastic culture, you do things with humor. So you want to point out to that person that they've got a bit of an anger issue, but you do it with humor. It's good-hearted. It's like a good-hearted thing. And once I heard that this person or we all knew that this person got really angry and they threw something very valuable to them at the wall and it was broken. It happened to be like a tape recorder, like a little tape recorder. And people made fun of him, like whenever he got a little aggressive during the debate. It was usually during the debate maybe, or sometimes even on another occasion he got like really grumpy. They made fun of him, like in a good way, like saying, hold on to your tape recorders, hold on to anything breakable. And it was good-natured, you know, it was like with this laugh, you know, and then he sooner or later had to laugh. And over the years, he really mellowed. I remember in the beginning, I thought he was a bit scary, but later on, he wasn't at all. He really mellowed down. And, you know, he can change. The thing is, like, if it was really in the nature of our mind, anger, we couldn't change, but it's not in the nature of our mind. It can be reduced. We all can do that. That's the beauty of our mind. It's like our body, basically. I mean, of course, there's certain limits to our body, which the same limits don't apply to our mind, by the way. That's something very important that we study a lot when we study about Buddhist psychology, which is not logic, it's like part of actually the study of logic. We studied that there's the limits, the physical limits we don't have when it comes to the mind. For instance, we can jump only that high, and higher is impossible, right? Okay, there's certain techniques, so some athletes, they jump higher now than they did 20 years ago, but there's still a limit. But what we notice about our body within the limits of what is possible physically, through some work, we can change our body. It's a very limited body right now, stiff, with lacking strength here and there, and still we can utilize this very stiff body and train it in yoga. It'll take time. You have to, continuously do it. Once a year, one will not make this body more flexible. But to do it, I don't know, every day, every second day, once a week. So depending on how often you do it, your body habituates, becomes familiar with certain movements, and it slowly stretches further. Really think exercise, like physical exercise, is not hard to understand. If you do strength, like training to strengthen your muscles will grow. If you want to have more stamina, right, be able to walk or run even for long distances, well, that will grow. So your body will inevitably change, but it takes time, it takes continuity, discipline, but then it will change. The same is true for our mind. There's no way, if you apply these different techniques, there's no way your mind won't change. There's just no way. It will change. It has changed since you were little, right? Because of doing certain things, what you learned in school, what you learned from your parents, what you emulated, like, your friends, seeing your parents, seeing your siblings, doing what they do, basically. So it has changed. And modern science is very much supporting it. What does it tell us? What is it called? Neuroplasticity. Our brain can change. Our brain changes all the time. In the beginnings of neuroscience, scientists thought, no, you've got one brain, you're stuck with that, and that's it. And especially when you get older, there's nothing you can do. Oh, no. Now things have changed profoundly. Even if you're older, the brain constantly changes. There are people, I know there was a lady, she was in her 70s or 80s, I think. She just graduated, or some years ago, she graduated from some prestigious university in the US, taking all the exams. Come on. She didn't have the opportunity to go to university when she was younger, so she did it then. And she graduated, right? People learn languages at that age. So it's all possible. It's the obstacle is thinking it's not possible. That's our main problem. We are our main enemy, thinking it's not possible. That's the power of the mind. Your own mind can make you think it's not possible, and then it's not. But if you believe the sky's the limit, well, then that's what's going to happen. Because our mind is not limited like our body. There's no limit to the love and compassion we can all generate for others, for ourselves and others. And of course, all these negative states of mind that stress us out, we can first of all reduce, and we can actually overcome. But that seems impossible to believe at that point. But let's not start going into the totally overcoming them. That seems so remote from us right now. But as I said, the mind changes. It changes all the time, as our body does. And if we apply the right exercises, and they're also called exercises, kind of mental exercises, then we can make profound changes. And a lot of people have done that. Like I said, even some of my classmates. And you can do the test. When you start practicing some of these methods, don't check every day whether you've changed. That's like doing yoga twice and checking how flexible you are. It's not going to happen, right? If you go to a gym, like give it a few months or maybe a year. We usually do that. We're more realistic. So the same when it comes to Buddhist practice. But if you do these practices, they're just techniques. That's why sometimes Buddhism, I don't think it's a religion as such. Maybe it goes too far for some of you to say, but I believe that strongly. It has religious aspects, but it's mainly a science of the mind. It's a science of the mind. First of all, getting to know the mind. How do I get to know the mind? Unfortunately, I can't use a telescope or a microscope or whatever because it's non-physical. So what is our tool to get to know the mind? Mindfulness. Now, we all learned about mindfulness. Observe your own mind. It's there. So how are you going to get to know it if you're only focused on the external objects, right? No, we're looking inward. What is the mind? How does it work? Get to know the mind. You can have, of course, maybe a therapist who guides you. But in this tradition, in Buddhist tradition, as Lama Yeshe once said, you become your own therapist. You become your own therapist in the sense that first you observe what's going on. Then you learn about the different types of minds that are possible. And then you distinguish which ones are helpful, which ones do I need, which one can I can develop further, which one can grow further, which are good for me and the people I'm socializing with, and which ones really harm me. Which ones are just unpleasant but don't harm me, and which ones are not just unpleasant but harm me. Which ones are pleasant and harm me, right? So it's really important to distinguish. First we learn about them, and once we learn about them, then, it's a bit like when you're a surgeon. A surgeon? No, is that a word? Surgeon? So, you're right, a surgeon, right? Yeah, that's a word. So a surgeon, like a heart surgeon, for instance. Oh yeah, this word. So a heart surgeon, for instance. The first time, they're still learning about heart surgery. So it's not going to be like, oh, there's a patient needs your help. You're not going to, allow them to open that person's chest and start, doing their thing. What are they going to have? Some model, right? Nowadays, you make these beautiful models of hearts, maybe even of rubber, so they feel like an actual heart, and then they cut away, and there's practice. In the same way, when we learn about the mind, first it's kind of like the mind is over there. So think of anger, right? You have it like almost in front of you, like a model heart in front of you. You have a model mind visualized now. Of course, it's immaterial. You could even write it out, make like an illustration if you wanted. So it has an object. This is how it arises. This is what it does. It's great. That's how you learn about it. But then what you need to do is look inward. So here you can't look at your neighbor. You can go, oh, my neighbor's anger. We're very good at identifying the anger or whatever negative emotion of another person. So, of course, we can't see the anger. We can only see an expression of that. We don't even know they're angry or not. In the end, how do we know? We don't even know they have a mind. It could be a zombie for all we know, right? I don't know whether you have a mind. I assume you do, but that's the one thing I can't perceive. So it's only my own mind. So the focus is on our own mind. Get to know the mind. But it's beautiful. Like we're like scientists. Get to know our own mind and get to realize that all our problems come from here. Yeah, we like to blame everyone outside of ourselves. We like to blame others for something. Oh, it's someone's this fault, that fault. I remember after COVID, COVID, it was such a crazy time. And I was in Germany at the time, and I remember listening to the news, and there was this whole program about finding those responsible for everything that went wrong during COVID. It's like, what? That's what you want to spend time and money on? Are you kidding me? I mean, we've all made mistakes. We all found ourselves in an unusual situation, and let's move on. Start blaming people now for what went wrong. I mean, learning from our mistakes, that's one thing, but it was a lot more about let's find those responsible, right? Let's look at our own mistakes. No, let's look at those who were mainly responsible. That's such a human response, unfortunately, that I think is really limited. What did I contribute to it, right? And not in a judgmental way, but to learn from our mistakes. Of course, other people make mistakes, and it's fine to point it out, but not at the not in an unrealistic way, not like as if there was one cause. Again, remember we talked about how we solidify things, how we'd like to think of the self as something very concrete. I here, you over there, good, bad, end of story. There's nothing as black and white as that, first of all. And secondly, when we talk about causes and conditions, causes and results, it seems sometimes like just one cause and one result. Impossible. Never ever do you have only one cause. Impossible. I mean, just think of a simple example of cause and effect. A seed gives rise to a sprout and then gives rise to a plant. You need so much for that. You need oxygen, you need water, you need fertilizer, minerals, light, and so forth. You need so much. So it's not just the seed and the sprout. Similarly, living in society, when things go wrong, so many causes and conditions come together. So that blame game, just that person, is not realistic. Also, we must have accumulated the causes for that. Because very, very important, one of the most important facts of Buddhism is that there is no objective reality. There isn't. And I cannot stress it enough. Sometimes the way Buddhism is presented, it seems to suggest there is. It talks about the external world and the internal world. But only because that's how we look at the world. That's how we understand the internal, the external. But even the external is totally dependent on our own mind. My external world is not your external world. Right? So what is the external world? It's the sum of everyone's perception of the external world. And again, just to remind you of science, telling us colors don't exist out there, right? All the colors you see around you, and the shapes for that matter, because colors and shapes, you know, they depend on each other. If you didn't have a color, you wouldn't have a shape. How would you perceive a shape if there wasn't any color that distinguishes it from everything else around? So shapes and colors don't exist out there the way we perceive them. They're light waves, at least the colors. They're light waves. None of what you see right now exists out there. That's really profound. Rationally, we go, yeah, sounds nice. Emotionally, we haven't even gotten there yet. Emotionally, on an emotional level, what I see out there doesn't exist out there. Isn't that interesting?
It doesn't exist out there in the way I think it does.
Pardon?
It doesn't exist out there in the way I think it does.
Yes, it doesn't exist, yes. So I say we, but basically, of course, we means each individual person. So taking myself, I have a perception of this room right now that is totally unrealistic. There are these colors over there. There's red, there's yellow, or whatever, cream colored, right? It's not out there. They're just light waves. It's not out there. It doesn't exist out there. Does this really sink in? It doesn't, right? Being so attached to this blue, whatever, jacket or whatever. It's not a blue jacket, right? I can be so attached. I want to have that object. Maybe other people see it totally differently. Yeah? And the thing is, like, I can think, yeah, it's not really blue. It appears to me, but I still like that appearance. Okay. But that's not how it feels. It's over there. It's out there. And if you don't think it's beautiful, there's something wrong with you. It's true, isn't it? I want to show you the BBC dress. This may be a good time, now that I have internet in here. The BBC dress. All right. Sooner or later, I show people this dress. Because this is what's interesting. I don't always find it right away. It's been a long time. Sometimes something else pops up, but let me see. Yeah, sure enough, there are a lot of dresses, but not... Oh, here it is, the BBC dress.
It's simply a...
Okay, now I've got only a YouTube thing here, but it doesn't matter. Right. To make it brighter. Okay. What is the color of this dress? What is the color? Is it sky blue and black, or is it white golden? Okay, sky blue and black, or white and golden? Sky blue and black. But I have a raise of hand. Just remember what the color you. Okay, let me see. Sky blue and black. I'm in the minority. You kidding me? Is this only us? All right. Oh, sky blue. Oh, okay. White and golden. Light blue and golden. Oh, 4 of us, at least 4. Yeah, I've heard it's the majority. I do not see it.
I mean, I don't see the sky, white and...
You don't see it as light blue and golden?
Light blue?
And golden.
Blue it is, but no.
Light blue and golden. I said white, sorry. Light blue and golden. Or do you see it as sky blue and black? Sky blue and black. Okay, a show of hands again. Sky blue and black. Yeah, it's the majority. I don't see it. I see it as light blue and golden. It's something about how our brain works. Okay.
Is it possible to see it from a little up close?
Close up? Yep, I can just pass it around. If you touch on it, then it may disappear. So maybe just put, yeah, very good. And anyway, if you use internet, you just go to a BBC dress. It was announced, or it was presented the first time on the BBC. Someone contacted the BBC and said, which is the color, we can't decide. Yeah. And I've been told that the majority sees it as sky blue and black. The majority.
Sun also changes color.
Pardon?
Go to the sun, it changes color then apparently.
It actually was sky blue and black. And when it was photographed, it was because of the shadow. It is sky blue and black in actuality. So you don't see it, right? No, right? Yeah, there we go. She sees it in the right way as I do. I'm kidding. You don't see it, right? You see sky blue. Do you see light blue and golden? Yeah, same thing. It's interesting. And I've just the other day I've read about this. I just wanted to find out exactly what is the reason, and that the majority of people see it the way it is. I mean, apparently, in actuality, this is just because of the light.
Yeah, it feels very scary, right? To think that what we think is out there and what we take for granted is actually not what we think.
That's a very good thing that you said, scary, because if it's scary, it means on an emotional level, it's registered. Yes, this is initially scary. That's a good type of fear. They talk about, thank you, there's the next one. Okay, now you get the sneaker. The sneaker. All right. Oh yeah, there are plenty of pictures of that one. That's pretty new. Times of India. Oh, they brought that on the Times of India. Okay. What is the color of the sneaker? Oh, wait. I lost it. What is the color of the sneaker?
White.
Is it
Pink.
a pink or gray or green? Green? Green or pink? All right. Green or pink? Green. Raise your hand. Pink. Can you pass it around again? Again, if you try not to touch it, because then it disappears. In my case, it keeps changing. If I look at it for a long time, it goes pink, gray, pink, gray, pink, gray. When I'm tired, it changes rapidly. Pink, gray, pink, gray. It's bizarre. But you see, half of all of us, almost half, at this time I was part of the majority, I think. You said it was pink, right? I thought it was pink. And the other half thought it was gray. It's again because of the light. There was a greenish light in the room, and therefore the gray appears to some of us, the pink appears to some of us gray, and to others. Yeah. Yeah, you've got the dress. You found the dress. Okay, great. You see, we don't always agree. We don't always see the same thing. We think everyone sees the same thing, but that's not even true. And those are just some examples we have recently become aware of. But so many others we're not aware of.
So then when we talk about a conventional reality where we agree this is a table or that's a chair,
Yeah.
can we say at least that exists and that most people or that in a particular country or a group of people would agree that that is what it is? Or
When we talk about a conventional reality, yes, how do we determine what is a conventional reality? Such an important idea in Buddhism, a conventional reality. Well, first of all, we'll get to that because that's all part of emptiness. We need to discuss it further. But we do talk about a conventional reality. But here, there are two conventional realities, the pink and the gray, right? So it's actually interesting. Usually as humans, we have similar perceptions. And we don't spend that much time on checking how similar these perceptions are. So this is just a coincidence that people found out about it with the dress, with the shoe. It became an internet sensation. I guess before internet, you couldn't even spread it as widely as you can do now. But as humans in general, I could say, I guess like in one particular group, we share certain likes or dislikes. I'm thinking of hummus, for instance, like this really delicious food. I use it also for an example for pregnancy. As I did yesterday, eating a bowl of hummus can make you feel you're pregnant for quite a while because it's quite heavy and, stays with you for a while. No, but like for instance, hummus, I love it, and a lot of people love it, but I'm sure there are people who don't like it. You don't like hummus? What's wrong with you? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, thank you. No, I'm joking, or certain foods, in places we've never gone to, if they eat certain insects. I mean, like, honestly, who likes to eat scorpions? It's disgusting, right? Scorpions. But actually, what are these animals in the sea? They look like scorpions, but they're not. Crabs. We eat crabs. I grew up eating crabs. These little crabs, right? White and pink. And even sometimes the whole thing. I remember with our parents, we'd go to Spain like for a vacation, and you have your paella, and you've got these whole animals right on the paella looking at you. And you're like, And then you crack them open. So I was like, it's so disgusting. It's like eating a scorpion from the ocean. And just because it's pink, it doesn't look any more appetizing. But I was used to it. We ate snails when I was a child. My classmates made so much fun of me. Whenever there was a snail, they're like, hold back this nun, she's gonna eat it. I once told them, my parents really liked snails. It's disgusting thinking about it now. But we used to eat them with herbal butter. These snails in the houses, you see them here, like a little bigger than that, and it's a different type. But yeah, they're inside, they're boiled, and you take like a special fork, you take them out, you dip them in the butter, and you eat them. I even ate frog legs once.
The place where I come from, snail is therapeutic.
It's eaten?
Yeah.
Wow, where is that?
In southern India, people do eat snail.
They eat snails? The same ones here?
Yeah.
Oh, the little ones?
Yeah.
Ah, interesting. It's
At least in farms, we used to find a lot of snails. But right now, because of all these pesticides, we don't even find snails.
So they're no longer, a lot of insects are no longer around because of the pesticides. Yeah, it's actually something, it comes from France, I guess, and my parents wanted to be very fancy, so we ate that. And I remember eating frog once. It tastes like chicken. It's terrible, I ate a frog. Well, I didn't see the whole frog, it was just the legs. They looked like little chicken legs, but it's terrible. And again, my classmates, whoa, there's some frogs in the monsoon. You know, we got like a frog. Hold on to the nun, she's gonna grab it and eat it. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is the stuff we think is edible and it's tasty and it's wonderful. Oh, I could no longer eat it. And when I grew up, there was something my family would eat and I hated it. Even now, it's so disgusting to me. Cow tongue. Ugh. Ugh. It's like biting on your own tongue. Ugh. So I could never eat that. But the thing is, like, what I'm trying to say is, as a convention, what we think is tasty, what is wonderful, it's very different. So what is it, disgusting or tasty? Right? In and of itself, it's neither. That's very important to allow that to sink on a deeper level. Stress, what is it? It's so bizarre that you see something different. I'm assuming we all see the same. You see, how can I be surprised? I am surprised because I assume on an emotional, deeper level that we all see the same. That there is that reality out there that we just happen, that it's just waiting for us to be discovered. Nothing to do with my own mind. In fact, my mind is just observing it. That's it. That is really profound. Because so many of our problems come from that perception. That there's a right political view. That there's a right way to do things. Sometimes, of course, there is. If it harms other sentient beings profoundly, then there is, like killing others, especially intentionally wanting to kill someone. Well, you know, has a result that is negative for those perpetrated, for those killing, and that's usually something we don't want to happen to us, so we say it's negative. But there are so many other things. Well, it depends on the person, their background, their cultural background. And now looking at different cultures in places where we've never been, they see things very differently. I've been told there is a tribe in Namibia, they don't have a name for they don't differentiate between blue and green. Everything's green. So even the sky is seen as a shade of green. Of course, if you live in a tribe, like they live in some thick jungle, they have different types of green. So having different names for the different types of green makes sense. So there's less blue, maybe just the sky. So just it's part of their language. It's also green. So they don't see things the same way as we do. If you don't distinguish, if we give certain hues, I mean colors are hues, there's certain shades of color. If we give them totally different names, then we see them as totally different. So it's got to do with the language we use, taking us towards language. I'm gently pushing you in that direction, right? Things are labeled, designated. If you don't have a word for particular shades, if they're just a subcategory of a different hue or color, then that's how you perceive it. So our language determines how we think, what we see. Isn't that interesting? In fact, when we were little children, we didn't see what we see now. How could we? We weren't even able to see three-dimensionally. And to add to the confusion, there is a documentary about a man who was able to see when he was very little, but he was too young to remember much, and then he became blind. And he became blind, and for many years he was blind. So he basically, when he was very young, he was able to see, but he was too young to have very strong memories of that. And anyway, he turned blind and lived as a blind person. And only when he was around, he had a family, kids, wife. And I think he was around his 50s or 60s. when he underwent a surgery that cured him of his blindness. Yeah. And so first, of course, they covered his eyes. He wasn't allowed right away to see because of the light and so forth. So for a few days he was wearing these kind of bandages after the successful operation. Don't remember exactly what they did, whether it was in the eye, probably something they cut away or changed in the eye. Anyway, he wore these bandages, and one day they removed them. And so they asked him, "What do you see?" And he said, "Nothing really." Like, he saw these blurs, right? He saw what we see, but he hadn't labeled these things. He hadn't, his brain, his mind hadn't done this process. So this is like seeing three-dimensional through shadows, right? We see three-dimensional now, so we see things with the shadows. We know when something flies towards us, when we need to catch it, when it's coming closer. Children can't do that yet. Have you noticed? We like catch, and they're like, and then the ball hits their head, and they go, too late. Yeah. So I don't think they have a sense yet how long it takes for a ball to arrive. Yeah. The motoric, of course, they don't find motoric is not developed as much, but I don't think they see it yet. I think it takes some time. You would know, right? You have a little child. So, right? It takes 2 years old? Yeah. So? Do they see three-dimensionally? What do you think?
No, I think that you can see, like, sometimes they have, like, a concept of something in the space.
Yeah.
But right now it's exactly the moment where everything is being labeled.
Ah, interesting.
So it's really fascinating.
Mm.
It's like they see something, like she doesn't know the difference between a bowl and a cup.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
So she calls like the bowls the water bowls. She says
Ah.
plates. Then you have to teach her, no, these are bowls. And sometimes it's really random. What do we call a bowl and what we call a plate? And still she has like imagination. So she takes the bowl, puts it on her head, it's a hat.
Interesting.
Very playful in the beginning.
That is very interesting. You see how we take it for granted, but then we see children and realize, well, there was a time when we didn't feel that way. When they start labeling, seeing the similarity between objects. So when you say bowl and cup, I'm thinking this part is kind of the same. So maybe that part, because really when we label, it is certain characteristics that we focus on, and based on them we label such and such. But at some point we're so familiar with it that we don't make these mistakes. But really, who's mistaken, right? Do you want to add something to that?
Just that it's interesting that it's also like really important in the beginning as a child to learn what's wrong and what's right. She's very sensitive if she makes a mistake.
Yes.
If she calls it a plate and everybody laughs.
Oh, yes,
that's also part of how the mind works.
Right. Yeah, it's also forming an identity as well, right? Laughing at me. Because the thing is, with our sense of self, that's there from the beginning. But it is an innate sense of self that is not as pronounced as the intellectually acquired one we have now. There's a huge difference. So in the beginning, children are not embarrassed to talk about in front of other people, right? They don't know them, no embarrassment. Hey, who are you, right? That's so cute about them. But then if other people laugh about them, right? In the beginning, maybe they're like, oh, they're laughing, I'm also laughing. But later on, it's like, no, me, they're laughing about me. And so they distinguish between me and others. That sense of I and everyone else being separate becomes stronger. So actually, that is an important process, and that may sound contradictory, but when we learn about what is called selflessness in Buddhism, no self, you should only learn about it if you have a healthy sense of self, sense of identity. If you have that intellectually acquired one. If you're missing that because something went wrong as a child, for instance, so sometimes children have no opportunity to build that sense. If they're passed on from one family to the next, and they're passed around in the foster system, for instance, and there's no real feedback, there's no love. They can't generate a healthy sense of identity. And then selflessness should not be introduced to them. It could be very damaging because they haven't really developed a strong sense of identity yet. And then to be told it's not there, first there needs to be a strong, at least conventional one, although it is mixed with a misconception, but there's a strong conventional sense of self, and that is important. So for instance, people who lack short-term memory, no, I mean, not just short-term, yeah, like maybe they have long-term, but no, how can you have, if you lack short-term right from the beginning, you never have long-term, I guess, because it's you forget everything. I'm just thinking of like an example I saw in the documentary. They had long-term, they remembered something from the past because they had an accident. But let's take a person who has no memory at all. You cannot have a sense of identity because you don't remember who you were a moment ago, right? Your memory of yourself is not there. So you cannot form a healthy, conventional sense of self. No identity. Can you talk about selflessness with that person? They'll misunderstand what we're talking about. They think of like not having a sense of, being this person, having done such and such. That has nothing to do with perceiving a self that doesn't exist. Our whole memory is part of who we think we are. We know what we can do, what we've done. That's part of our identity, very important. And that forms at that age. And it's interesting, yes, so children at some point, exactly when they make a mistake. But there's something else that I'm just thinking of. And before I forget, I want to put it out there. I remember in His Holiness the Dalai Lama has spoken about it a lot, about children. And I saw this documentary myself after His Holiness spoke about it. And I saw he talked about it in some university, and I just happened to be there. And they showed this little video. But later on, I saw the whole documentary about it. How they use little children, they take little children, uses the wrong word, they take little children, they're there with their moms, and they show them cartoons, or they show them little puppet games. And they show them when, like these puppets, they are very nice with each other, they are loving with each other, and the child is happy. And then they show one puppet beating the other, and the child gets upset. They get upset. They don't like it. And they even did some brain tests. They kind of put some, electrodes on their brain, and you can see they get stressed. Seeing other beings harmed in these, they get stressed. Or in like cartoons, like little things where like one cartoon, it helps the other cartoon thing to get up a mountain. And then there's one up there and it pushes the other person down again. Like just little simple things without blood and gore and stuff. No, but they get upset. So they have an instinctive sense of non-violence, basically. They don't want to see this. It's not part of, when we're born with tendencies and so forth. But actually, we're not a blank slate as such. But our mind is much more in its natural state. Right? I mean, it's the very subtle mind was reborn, and then that mind has to become coarser again. And then we learn from others, right, to distinguish and so forth. But it shows the actual nature. A child's mind is a lot closer to the actual nature. And I remember years ago, when my siblings started having kids, so I was at their home. No, I was in the home of my stepmom, and so my niece, she was watching television, and she loved watching animal movies. So we thought it was pretty harmless. That's fine, And it was like we had to do something, so we just put her in front of the TV. She was like 4, so she was allowed to watch that one TV show, like this one animal movie. She was all excited, and she sat there very quietly, and suddenly she screams with such a scream that I thought someone just, pierced her with a knife. It was such a scream I hadn't heard. In a panic, we ran from the kitchen to the living room, like, what happened? And she's looking at this, what was it? One insect that ate another insect. That was it. one insect ate another insect. And she was so, it ate it, oh, and she was so upset. And I was like, bless her heart, you know, like they're not used to violence yet. So they thought it was so terrible that this happened. And to me, it shows exactly that love and compassion are in the nature of our mind. And anything like nasty and terrible for a child is very disturbing. Unfortunately, we grow used to it. Do you have any experience of that type?
Something from my work, but you know when you shoot a movie and you have to have a baby on set,
Yes.
and you need to make the baby cry, then the best way to do it is to start crying yourself. You cry yourself and the baby starts to cry.
Wow.
And then it's called a baby wrangler.
You call the baby what?
The person who treats the
Oh.
babies and children on
Baby wranglers?
movie set is a baby wrangler.
Okay, baby wrangler. Not a handler, but a wrangler.
No,
Okay.
wrangler.
Yeah, a wrangler.
Wrangling sheep or
Okay.
horses or dogs or whatever.
Okay.
But it works wonderfully. Like if you have a crying baby, then they say you have to do like a breathing meditation. Like that's what I do when my child has a nightmare.
Oh.
It's important to have like soothing voices, and we do it naturally.
Yeah. To soothe the
If you
child.
start laughing, then they start laughing with you.
Ah.
Yeah, it also has like a society. Like if she's in a room full of adults and we're laughing from something, she starts laughing too spontaneously.
Yeah. That shows our ability, that shows innate compassion. Because how can you have compassion? You put yourself into the other person's shoe, right? We have something that modern science has actually supported that's called mirror neuron. Have you heard about the mirror neuron? That makes it possible for us to put ourselves into the other person's shoe. That's why when we are with another person, oftentimes we imitate them. We do unconsciously, right? If they kind of start scratching themselves somewhere, we can also start, paying attention to that. And actually when they talk about, for instance, playing tennis, then the same parts in our brain light up as if we were playing tennis, because we're really putting ourselves into their shoes. So the more we can do it, the less we're busy with ourselves, let's put it that way. The less we're busy and concerned about ourselves, the more we can listen. And a baby is still able to do it, I guess. Like you see another person cry and you also cry. But we can also see that. We can also observe that in ourselves. When we see another person being informed, for instance, that their child has died. I mean, I don't know about what that feels like, but I have some sense that it's the worst thing that can happen to anyone, right? So you can see when this person cries, you can feel yourself tearing up because you're putting yourself into their shoes. You can never really do that. You never feel exactly what they feel, but that's the way to generate compassion. That's why we can be compassionate. That's the first step to compassion. You need to put yourself into their shoes. And the more you can do it, the more perceptive you are, the less self-absorbed you are, and the more compassionate you are. That's our problem. Going back to our self-centeredness. So babies, they have a much purer mind in the sense yet that there's not that strong sense of me against the rest of the world, right? They see another person cry and it becomes almost like their pain, if you want. Yeah. So it shows the nature of our mind versus all the balagan. I like that word. All the balagan we add to it, all the messy stuff we add to it. That's a word. It's actually Arabic, isn't it? But it kind of means mess. But it's wonderful. I love that word, balagan. It's such a mess. Pardon?
I think it's Turkish.
It's Turkish. I know a Turkish word now. Yeah. Balagan.
I think so. I'll check it for you.
All right.
I think
It's Turkish.
the Ottoman Empire.
It's lovely, balagan. It's like such a mess, such a balagan. Sorry, you want to say something?
When you say to put yourself in someone else's shoes,
Mhm.
I think of empathy, right?
Yes.
There's been a lot of research that's done that empathy is actually not healthy, but I find in some of the analytical meditations where it's nice to kind of start off with some empathy and then transform that to compassion. But I'd love to hear your perspective on, could you have compassion without You know, if you work in social work or at a hospital, being empathetic to all these patients, if you take that home with you, it's not sustainable. The compassion is, and that's like the difference, but you said put yourself in someone else's shoes. I think of that more as empathy versus compassion.
All right, you're bringing something up that is so important. It is such a, you see, we misunderstand compassion in such a profound way. I was actually going to talk about it later, but I address it now. It doesn't matter, we can always go back to it again later. I also exactly heard that especially people who are in the medical profession, you know, like nurses, especially in like emergency kind of situations where you are exposed to the most horrific situations, that empathy is a problem. Because if you put yourself into that person's shoes, you feel their pain and you can no longer work effectively. And it what's the word? Drains you, it pulls you down. Yeah, and this is a very common comment, and a very valuable, very important comment when we talk about compassion. Compassion for one person seems to be already, and I'm saying, I'm just using this one comment, although that's not exactly your question, but like, we need to think about the suffering of sentient beings, right? Without even saying putting yourself into their shoes, but saying you need to think about it. How depressing is that? Just thinking of one person. All sentient beings? You kidding me? Right? Now, what was this question? Empathy here, the way I guess empathy is defined is as putting yourself into their shoes. It's not just intellectually understanding it, but a lot more. Thinking, what is it like to be them? According to my understanding, you can't do without it. The most powerful compassion is when you put yourself into the other person's shoe. But then you have exactly that problem. This is where wisdom comes in. Very important. So wisdom comes in. Compassion, the way, if we were to meditate only on compassion without anything else, impermanence, the nature of suffering, and so forth, it would really overwhelm us, I think. To give you a hint, what is the kind of compassion we're talking about? What is the end result of that? The result of that is an incredible courage. An incredible courage and determination. So it gives a person such a strength that they can go beyond themselves. So think of a mother, I mean, again, the mother example or the father example I think is really good. You know, like when you have a mother or a father and they see their child experiencing the most horrific thing right now, they're not going to think, ugh, that's, oh my God, ugh, that's depressing. No, it's like, I need to do something, and they run and they do it, right? We can all get a bit of a sense of that. So having said that, that doesn't help. That doesn't answer the question yet. But this is taking us in this type of direction. Now, going back to the empathy, if we put ourselves into the shoes of that person, what we need to recognize within us is an automatic, we may not be aware of it, a sense of permanence. We have an automatic sense of permanence. It's always going to be like that. I don't know if you've ever, this takes time to recognize it in yourself. But sometimes when people get sick, they feel really depressed. And if you dig deeper, why am I so depressed? Because I'm feeling unwell. There's almost a sense, it's hard to really grasp it, it's going to be like that forever, right? It sounds like, oh no, it's going to be like, it could just be an hour. If I were to remind myself, oh, just maybe an hour, or it may just be a day, then it's like, oh, big deal. How long is a day? It's over really soon. But when you're in the midst of it, it seems endless. It seems endless. So there's a very subtle holding on to permanence. Impermanence seems pretty easy. Seems pretty easy. It's not that hard to explain it, that things change all the time and they're never the same. But to really take it to a level when it has a profound effect on our mind, very different. In fact, I believe if you understand impermanence on a really subtle level, emptiness is not that hard to understand. It's not that hard to understand. Therefore, here, right now, when we put ourselves into another person's shoe, there's always a sense of, it's going to be like that for a long time. I've really noticed that in my own mind, and I need to recognize, wait a minute, okay, it's like that now, but things could change already tomorrow. They could be different already, right? So, and the next thing, I mean, there's so many thoughts. I'm trying to organize my thoughts right now because it's such an important question. So one thing is to remember in that moment, you see this person suffering, it's not going to be like that forever. Especially because I can maybe do something. I can do something. I'm ready there to help. And maybe I could do something right now. And also there are other beings who are definitely around and they're doing their best to do something. That could be helpful. Secondly, to think of the nature of this existence. We also have a very interesting tendency. This is called cyclic existence. Everything we experience is in the nature of suffering. Remember, we talked about it the first day. Not because there's anything wrong with the objects around us. It's something with our mind itself. It shortchanges us in the sense that the kind of happiness an arhat could experience, we just can't experience right now. What we experience and we call happiness, they would say it's ridiculous. Secondly, it doesn't last. So we discussed this a lot in the very beginning, but just understanding that this is samsara and suffering of suffering, I mean actual pain, is part of it. In my own mind, I'm always seeking some lasting happiness, still now. I'm still searching for it. It's ridiculous how instinctively my mind does that. And I'm surprised when there's suddenly a lot of suffering around, right? It surprises me. I know intellectually, I read about it. And so it's a lot more being realistic that this is part of life. Pain is part of life. The most horrific things, they're part of this nature. So if we wear these blinkers, you know, like horses wear these blinkers so they can't see. Do you call them blinkers? Blinders. Oh, not blinker. A blinker is something else. Blinders, that's right. So blinders, like wearing blinders, you don't see the things around you. So right now we're focused on being well and not experiencing problems, avoiding problems at all costs, making sure our children at all costs have no problems, right? I'm not sure we're doing them such a great favor at all time. Because Tibetans are sometimes like, let them fall down and know what it feels like. It seems a little harsh, yeah? But they're like, if they have some pain, they can learn to deal with pain better in the future. And so what I'm trying to say is here, if we become more familiar, this life is full of pain. Let's look around. Let's look at other countries. What's going on? Yeah, I'm lucky right now. I'm not experiencing this. But I don't know how far the pain is. I could be hit by a car and that's it. And that's the end of it. So to be aware of this could happen any time. Terrible things could happen any time. And to see it more as part of life. So the question that you asked was asked not too long ago, a few months ago, like by someone in a course. And I remember the way I answered. It was probably asked in a different way. But my response was something like that. And I'm not sure this really answers your question. But we become, and I use the word like doctors. We become like doctors. We put ourselves into their shoes. But then just understand that is in the nature of the body to experience that. And then instead of going, oh, this is horrible, this is terrible, we feel like, I need to do something. I need to do something. I can do something. So you're like, okay, I'm right there. And it's this courage that gets you going. You do treat the person, And in a way, you are emotionally invested because you don't want them to have that pain. They just, someone cut off their arm and you're not like, oh, okay, it's just their arm cut off, they're not going to die right away. Let's have a cup of tea in between. No, you have a sense, oh my God, no, this is terrible. The pain they're in, the horror they're experiencing. I know what that feels like. I need to do something. So it's empathy, yes. But in a way, I cannot just sit still there. I need to do something. And you give your very best. And I guess in that moment, you know your limitations. You need to be aware. You need to be patient with yourself. Okay, there's a limitation, but I've given my very best. I think psychologically, that's how you could deal with it. But every person is different. Every person is different. So understanding it's impermanent. It's in the nature of existence. I find that really important, at least for me personally. It is part of life that we can experience most incredible pain. Pain that can even kill us. That shouldn't surprise us. It is just reality. But if it happens to someone else, I have now the responsibility to everything I can, the best I can, to relieve that suffering. So you put yourself into that person's shoes when you listen to their mental problems, for instance. Okay, what can I do? What can I do to relieve that pain? You try to, but then you also learn to let it go. As in, like, it doesn't stay with you the entire day because you are not that person. But when you're with this person, you give them your undivided attention and you listen to them. Sometimes there's nothing you can say, but just listening to them and understanding them. And oftentimes, your full attentiveness and your full readiness to understand it helps you to say the right thing. It actually does. It's like an automatic process. So the I is out of the way. I don't know why, I'm really still struggling with this. Why can empathy pull us down? But I think it's the sense of permanence. I think it's a sense of, it shouldn't be like this. It's like reality should be free of pain. No, this is samsara. And a sense of acceptance. And then a sense of personal responsibility. I need to do something. I need to do my very best. One very good friend of mine told me this beautiful story. It's really touched me. She's a nun. She's one of my friends at the Nunnery. And her brother is a geshe who lives in Singapore and is a teacher there. And he's a really good geshe in that he's totally honest, no pretense, and I'm not saying that, no, I mean, no, but he's like one of those really like true, and he's very honest. I really appreciate his honesty. But he's also very hands-on. He does what he needs to do. And when my friend visited him in Singapore once, she said the most amazing thing happened, and I thought it was so beautiful. This lady, she fell off some stairs, and she hurt herself badly, and blood was gushing out of her body. He didn't hesitate for a moment. He jumped right onto this lady, basically, and he just tried to stop the blood. And he was full of blood, but for him in that moment, it was just to help her. He dropped everything and just helped her. And her sister, his sister, she told me later, and I thought, wow, this is what it should be like. You see someone suffer, it's like you're suffering, and you do whatever you can. And later on, this monk was a little bit, he was not criticized, but the people from Singapore said, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have helped her. You could go to court, because if something happened to her, she could blame you because of, and I thought about this, and when she told me this, I said, no, that's not true. You go to court, you do whatever, okay, but it was the right thing to do. In that moment, this woman was bleeding. Well, she sues you or she doesn't, that's her thing. But my personal responsibility to not have any regret is to help her. That was so inspiring to me. I thought, never ever forget, in that moment, someone needs help, you react, right? Hopefully in the right way, you're not making it worse. But, if someone is bleeding, I mean, you try to stop the bleeding, I guess, right? I mean, and of course to have some training makes sense. So my point is really, here, put yourself into the other person's shoe. Do it at all times. the more we train ourselves, the easier it gets with everyone. Because if we're just so, you see, I think we're so occupied with ourselves and avoiding problems and making, so therefore it gets overwhelming when we do it for the first time in a situation like that. Yeah, that's probably something that's even more important. If you practice this, and that's all about Buddhist practice, put yourself into other person's shoes. Every time you're with another person, put yourself into their shoes, what it's like to be them. Listen carefully. And then you do it anyway. It's part of who you are. And then when there's real trouble, it's like, yeah, I can do something, right? It doesn't pull you down. Yeah, so really, I'm sorry, I've been thinking aloud here because I'm trying to answer this question, which is so important. Impermanence, the nature of suffering, and constantly train yourself. That's what it is. Constantly train yourself. Does that make sense? If there's any disagreement, please come ahead. I mean,
Can I add?
please.
Do you remember
Yes.
Tibetan three levels of compassion, right? The three levels of compassion.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Now, and here in the Western psychology, empathy literally means putting yourself in the shoes, but then people get overwhelmed with it.
Yes.
So one of the answers I've heard is when you bring in that rational cognitive element that's present in compassion that is not in empathy, that's what helps you to feel, okay,
Yes.
I can do something. I know the reality, this is impermanent, there is a way out, and I will do my best to help. So then you don't get the burnout that you get only with empathy.
Yes, absolutely.
That's how I understand.
The three types of suffering, it's true, but the three types of suffering, it's a little bit, the three types of compassion is a little bit difficult, that one. We're going to get to these three types. I didn't mention them simply because this is when you have compassion and you realize impermanence.
Yes.
We can't do that right now.
Right, yeah.
We can't do that right now. So that is a little bit advanced, and you have emptiness as well.
That's right.
I haven't even mentioned emptiness. I didn't mention emptiness on purpose because it can be misunderstood to mean, well, it doesn't really exist over there. It's like, it doesn't, it's not going to make things better because for that person it's very real, and for you it may be very real as well. So I haven't mentioned that. You're absolutely right. But for us in the beginning, I think it's helpful to think of impermanence all the time, to make that part of our practice. And even though we won't be able to do it simultaneously with compassion yet, understanding the impermanence of the person and having compassion for them, but to prepare our mind. Again and again, impermanence. Again and again, suffering nature of samsara. And again, put yourself into the other person's shoe. Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm wondering, I think you can be compassionate without having empathy, or if you imagine someone that's on the spectrum that really struggles to feel empathy. Like, I feel like these two concepts, like, they're of course like tied together, but you could have compassion in an absence of empathy, and especially if you're trying to like meditate on loving kindness or compassion for all living beings, really feeling that, or at least as a lay person or where I'm at in my journey, that seems pretty indescribable to be able to feel all of that. So you can have compassion without empathy, I guess is my question.
Yes, okay. What I mean is, okay, all right, let me think of like a person who's on the spectrum. So you're talking about someone with autism, for instance.
Yeah, that maybe can't like imagine what it's like to be in someone else's shoes or some of these.
Are we sure they cannot do that?
I think I don't know. I'm not an expert in that, but I think it's maybe challenging, or maybe someone who's challenging to do that.
But you're right.
Imagine for a thought experience.
You're right. Actually, it doesn't have to, we don't have to talk about the spectrum. I think even within like people we would ordinarily call healthy, some can do it better than others. So there are different degrees. I'm trying to think. You see, of course, there are different types of compassion, first of all. So different types of compassion, different strength of compassion. So the question is, do you need to put yourself into the other person's shoe? I'm pretty sure you're right. You can have compassion without doing that. The sincere wish for someone to be free from suffering. But I could imagine that it's the wish is much deeper if you have a stronger sense of what it feels like. It's a bit like, if you have, for instance, if you have experienced what it's like to be bullied in school. If you haven't experienced it, yeah, it's kind of like, okay, that must feel terrible, but I don't really know. But if you know from yourself, you're so much more compassionate, right? The compassion comes from your own experience. It's not just about putting yourself into the other person's shoe, doing that based on your own experience. It's much more powerful. So I would argue it becomes more powerful. And I would argue, even though right now some can do it better and some cannot, it's a matter of practice. Anyone can learn that. Anyone can learn it. And we do it oftentimes, I think, with the people we're very close to anyway. Maybe even with our animals. I mean, even people on the spectrum. Wow, with animals, they have this incredible ability to read the animal, right? Some, not all. So there's so many different varieties of people with autism, with different mental impairments, if you like. I mean, actually, from a Buddhist point of view, we all lack empathy in that way anyway. I mean, only a Buddha can really know what it's like, right? But anyway, to say just in general, on a conventional level, yes, so some people can do it better than others, but everyone can learn it. And I would say it makes it more powerful. Yeah. All right, those are important questions. This is important. These are aspects we really need to think about. How does compassion, and we haven't spoken about compassion as much yet. We've more talked about what is in the way to compassion, the afflictions, but we at least did the definition and we did address it to some degree. And when we did this little, what was it called, webinar, someone asked, what should we think, what should we teach, what should we think about first, compassion or emptiness, remember? And although we speak more about compassion first than emptiness, it should be more an alternating. And I believe it's most effective when we constantly talk about different things and then go back to this and go back to that, to get a better sense of each puzzle piece, but also how it all fits together. All right, so far, we've heard a lot about compassion. We've heard a little bit about emptiness, about how things don't exist the way they appear. And yesterday, what did we discuss? We discussed a lot about what is in the way. What is right now our main obstacle? What do we have to mainly fight against? Like what jihad are we fighting? Our inner enemies, right? What is the jihad we're fighting? What is this inner enemy? Our own mental afflictions. But how do they work? Okay, does anyone remember what is the main troublemaker? Where does it start? I want to hear from you now. Everything about these different afflictions, why they're wrong consciousnesses, how they arise. So do a little test. What is the root misconception? Yes?
The sense of self, we misconceive it, we exaggerate it, we project it, and then we form attachment because it's the closest thing to us.
Oh, okay, you took it a little bit. Okay, you already took it from there a little further, but let me just repeat what you said. Pardon? Attachment. Well, I'm going a step before that. Okay. It's a fundamental misconception of reality. It's a fundamental misconception in that we believe the self and everything else to exist more concretely, existing basically in and of themselves and not dependent on the mind or anything else. As if there was a very concrete, this is a table, this is a this is that, the way things appear to us as existing out there independent of our mind. So let's call it inherent existence or whatever. And part of that misconception is a very strong sense of I. How does that manifest? How does that manifest? What did I say? What is our sense of self right now that is unrealistic?
Outside of body and mind, there is like a permanent.
Something separate from mind. Yeah, outside, not literally outside, of course, but exactly separate from body and mind. Yeah, very good. Anything else?
My happiness is more important than yours.
My happiness is more, that's part of the attachment. So not yet, but it's just the sense of a self. How does the self appear to you? As separate from mind and body. Anything else?
Very concrete and permanent.
concrete and permanent. Permanent, right? Let's check. Do you have a sense of permanence or not? Your sense of self. Think of yourself when you came into this room. Remember when you came into this room? Is that I the same as the I that is now sitting here? Is there a sense it's the same I? It's exactly the same. I'm not saying intellectually. Don't think like a Buddhist. Think like Shubham, right? From deep within. Is that the same I that came into the room? Is that the same Shubham? It doesn't... Pardon?
Seems like it adds, like tower.
All right. Okay, so he doesn't agree. To me, pardon? I have a sense it's the same. I have the sense it's the same. The person that came into this room, the one who's sitting here, is exactly the same. In fact, the one that's talking to you right now and talking to you yesterday seems to be the same to me. That is my sense of permanence. Because if myself yesterday and myself today are the same, they're identical, couldn't have changed. Right? Yes?
I wonder what's the difference between a sense of continuity and a sense of permanence. It feels to me like it's not the same person.
It is not, but it is.
But there's a sense of continuity.
Right. So it doesn't seem to you it's the same person. Let me ask you something. Did any of you ever hold a grudge? Who held a grudge before? Okay, we all held a grudge. Holding a grudge. What's holding a grudge in Hebrew? Ah. Yeah. Right? So what happens is someone comes into the room and we say, oh, that's the guy who insulted me yesterday. Oh, that's the same person. Right? We hold a grudge because the person who insulted us or who somehow harmed us in some way, we see that to be the same person now. It's like, I'm angry with this person now because of what they did yesterday. If, we had a strong sense of a continuum, the mind has changed, the body has changed. The person yesterday, they wouldn't do this today, but they did it yesterday. And still, I'm being angry with them now. Which shows, to me, that is the same person. Right? Why would I be angry? Be angry with them yesterday is fine, but why am I angry with them now? Or sometimes people, I remember once a girl from Israel actually, she asked me, she said she was raped when she was, a few years ago, she was raped, and she asked me whether she's a victim. And I thought about from a Buddhist point of view, she was a victim then, when she was raped. But once the rape is over, she's not a victim. You see, like when something terrible happens to you, the way the word is used, you're a victim when something terrible happens to you. And, I don't know how else you would define it, but let's just keep that simple definition. But then when that harm is over, you're no longer a victim. I mean, she felt it was terrible. It was like, I'm a victim for my whole life. But by definition, right now, is someone harming you? No. So right now, you're not the victim. But it's the sense, I was a victim in the past, so I still am. You still hold on to it, and that's what you become. Or guilt. Guilt is a classic example of holding on to permanence. I am that mistake I made 10 years ago. Right? I am that mistake. I made a mistake. Right? Okay, I made a mistake. Move on. I mean, we make mistakes all the time. Big deal. Yeah? I said Tibetans don't even have a word for that. I mean, they may experience guilt, of course. I mean, especially nowadays, being very much also influenced by the Western way of life. But guilt is actually, it's not regret. It's not remorse. It's rather holding on to a mistake you've made, identifying with that mistake, and if it lies in the past, now holding on to you being that person who made a mistake. You're no longer that person. So when you say continuity, I've mentioned that roughly, but there's something very interesting going on in our mind. I believe there are two levels. there's a more rational level, and there's a deeper, more emotional level. One example, I know I could die anytime on that level. I could die anytime. You ask me, could you die anytime? Sure. I could be dead by tomorrow. Deep within? No, I'm too busy. I've got a lot planned. I'm too busy dying. It's just not, it doesn't fit into my schedule. Right? That's how it feels. Secondly, beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. I love that saying. It's beautiful, right? Makes total sense. So up here, somehow intellectually, it feels that way. But again, if someone dresses in a really weird way or has really weird curtains, I go, oh, that's a weird way of, putting up a curtain. I mean, what like, it's like, they consider it beautiful. That's just my opinion. And still there's a sense, this is beautiful or not, appropriate or not, or what have you. So many examples. There's a sense, yeah, there's a continuum. I cannot be the same. I wasn't scientifically trained, but I had a little bit of science class in school. So I know biology, cells changing, all that. So on an intellectual level, yes, there's a continuum. But deep within, that's different. So those two often don't match. They don't match. So that's why we do meditation. That's why we do analytical meditation, where we use the coarser level to access the deeper level, to access the emotional level, right? We do it, like I said many times, we do it with anger, a meditation on anger. Someone insults us, we don't get angry right away. We start analyzing, how dare they say that? I've been so kind to them, I've helped them so long. They didn't say that to that person, this other person deserves much more to be insulted. And then it goes down onto an emotional, there's an emotional sense of feeling enraged, feeling like, how is this possible? So we exaggerate the negativity of that person, and then we're angry. Right? Here we did a great job from the intellectually, bringing it down to the emotional level. But oftentimes they run parallel. I believe we do think, yes, it's a continuum, but we don't feel it's a continuum that's ever changing. It doesn't feel that way. For some of you it could, depending on how familiar you are with these concepts. And even if you haven't thought about them a lot in this life, well, who knows what you did in the past. So I don't want to say you don't feel that way. I personally feel this way, that it's the same I, right? But it could be very different for everyone else, depending on what you've done in the past, how familiar you are with these ideas. But I believe, and this is not really mentioned in the texts as much, or not in that way maybe, but I think it's very important to stress the difference between that more intellectual kind of like, yeah, right, versus this deep within, that emotional kind of part of us that governs our actions, that controls our actions. Did you want to read?
Yeah, I know we have talked a lot in this. These are wonderful, exciting topics. Just practically, do we need a break right now? Or
Practices we can do for that, you're saying? What did you say?
tea break? Should we take a tea break?
Oh, tea break, of course. Oh my God. Sorry, yes, absolutely, I forgot.
There were so many nice topics, we got carried away. Do you want a tea break?
Yeah, let's take a tea break. Absolutely, you need to take a break. Please, have a break.
15 minutes? So.
Yeah, 15 minutes okay? Yeah. Enough time? All right, good.